12th annual Treefort Music Fest is quickly approaching. Starting on March 20th, you can enjoy 5 full days of musical performances, comedy, food, films, skateboarding, yoga, beer, podcasting, just name it. If you've never been, just imagine South by Southwest, but without the corporate BS, and more conveniently located in beautiful downtown Boise, Idaho. For more info on any of this, go to treefortmusicfest.com. You can buy passes now at treefortmusicfest.com/tickets. Ilana Glazer, co-star and co-creator of the cult comedy hit Broad City, is coming to Portland on February 9th. That's this Friday at the Newmark Theater right next to the Schnitzer. Tickets are going fast though. The later show is already sold out, but you can still get tickets for her earlier 5:30 p.m. performance over at www.portland5.com. That's Portland5.com. But you better do it quick though, because that's definitely going to sell out too. Today on CityCast Portland, we're talking about a public space downtown causing some heated debates, Commissioner Carmen Rubio's never-ending bag of money saving the Portland street response for now, and some skeptical county commissioners not fully on board with the governor's 90-day emergency fentanyl declaration. Joining me on this Friday's News Roundup are Portland Mercury news reporter Taylor Griggs and our very own executive producer, John Notarianni. It's Friday, February 9th. I'm Claudia Meza, and this is what Portland's talking about. Well, welcome everyone to the Friday News Roundup. Taylor, John, thanks for being here.
Hello, hello.
Hello, thank you.
Taylor, it's been a little bit since we had you on the show.
I know, I'm glad to be back. Thank you for inviting me again.
I just feel like we practiced that interaction for weeks and then we blew it. So today is the day.
Oh, God.
To a roaring start.
Is that really what it feels like? Oh, no.
Sorry. Today is the day we break down some of the biggest local stories of the week with some of the best and brightest journalists in town. But before we jump into the news, I like to ask all our guests an opening question, just so everyone listening at home knows who's in the room, what they're getting into. So my opening question today, I'm sure you've noticed that we're in the thick of winter. And we sporadically are getting like just little bits of sun here and there. And it made me wonder like what you guys do once the sun comes. Like what is the first thing that you do that it makes you feel like, yes, winter is done?
Oh, that's easy for me. I feel like I used to say this on the show all the time, and I haven't in a couple months for obvious reasons. But like as soon as the sun comes, I'm headed out to Kelly Point Park, just going to the beach and hanging out, going for a dip in the river when it is way too cold and immediately regretting it, and then getting back on the beach to dry out in the sun.
Yeah, but at least you beat the mosquitoes. I feel like the mosquitoes don't come till like mid-summer.
It's true.
What about you, Taylor?
Well, I don't wear 2 layers of pants underneath my other pants. That I feel free in. I know I sound like such a contrarian. I also enjoy the nice weather and biking around, but it's I know that it's spring is here when I don't have to wear a base layer underneath all my clothes. What about you?
I do like 2 things possibly. One, I immediately want to go to the coast. I don't know why. I'm just like, now I want to see the ocean with the sun, And I try to get into a hike that has a beautiful view because I want to see it all.
Yeah.
That's like my first instinct, but usually it's hard for me to get to the coast because I don't really own a car. So it's a lot of like, So I end up just like going on like a bike ride or I get on my kayak. And that's like the big thing is like being outside with the most exposure to the sun. And those are the 2 activities.
I love that both of our picks involve getting in the water when it is like still too cold to reasonably be in the water.
I will say I'm very vitamin D deprived, so that could be, once I get it, I think my attitude will shift. I'll be a little bit more optimistic.
You got to take them pills. We all do.
Know.
The Northwest is perpetually deprived of vitamin D. Anyone listening, if you're not taking vitamin D, you need to be taking your vitamin D.
You really should.
Well, thanks, you guys. On to the news of the week. Taylor, you're bringing us one of your stories reporting on the fight over a downtown public space.
Yeah, this was really interesting to me. I've kind of been covering O'Brien Square saga for a while, but last year, when the city announced that they'd be demolishing the parking structure underneath the square and making it habitable for a kind of interim park. There was a lot of excitement from many different kinds of people, the process of deciding kind of what would be in this park. So I think that was something that was interesting to people. And the Portland Parks Foundation hosted a bunch of workshops and kind of had some seminars from people locally and otherwise. And it was interesting, and they got a lot of input. And then they announced the new design, and it was, according to people who had participated in this process, not really what anyone had wanted.
Yeah. Didn't they rebrand it to the Darcel 15 Plaza, which is pretty cool?
Mhm.
Like, I was really excited for that theme downtown, like a bit of color, a bit of history.
Oh yeah, totally. And then that was this summer, and I thought that was a really good thing too. O'Brien was some mayor in like the 19th century who only was in office for 1 year before he like messed up and was kicked out. So
why would they give him the part?
No Darcel, that's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, Darcel is much better.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I love the idea of honoring Darcel with this because it's interesting to think about like the two downtowns that exist simultaneously, right? Like we have this one downtown that is just sort of like money and like luxury hotels, and like this park is right by the Ritz-Carlton, So sort of this playground for wealthy people. And then I feel like Darcel kind of represents this other side of downtown, this classic sense of Portland of like weirdos and like, all sorts of inclusion of different people. And I feel like the city knew what they were doing when they decided to name it after Darcel, sort of trying to evoke that, but like maybe not actually nailing it in the design that they are choosing, right?
Yeah, definitely. And there are some elements of it that I think, so it's colorful. They have a little chandelier.
The chandelier is perfect.
Yeah, which
Can I tell you quickly why?
Please.
So I interviewed Darcel for like some BBC thing. This is a while ago. And so I went to her house. Every room has a chandelier, sometimes even hallways. And that was a thing that she wanted. And it was kind of awesome. You're like, why does the kitchen have a chandelier?
That's amazing. Okay,
Cool.
That's perfect.
That's so
that,
cool.
to me, that was the only thing true Darcel that I personally saw in the plans.
Well, I've never seen a chandelier in a park before. I don't know exactly how they'd set it up, but it's a cool idea. I think it would be very alluring.
Yeah.
There are three things people are arguing about. So one is the dog park that's in the plaza, and it kind of takes up this corner that's, well, it would be outward facing to the street, if not for the second thing people are fighting about, which is the fence around the entire plaza, which it would make Darcel Plaza the first fenced-in kind of public park in Portland. The third thing is the lack of food carts, which a lot of people wanted.
Yeah, I heard the big concerns were that a lot of people didn't think that the design was influenced for the benefit of the public.
Yeah, I mean,
what I heard is that they were thinking it was like Ritz-Carlton, that a lot of downtown interests is what I read.
Totally, yeah. I mean, and when they developed the Ritz-Carlton, wasn't there like a whole thing? Wasn't like part of the pitch that they were going to redevelop this plaza as something that is accessible to the community? That it's like, oh yeah, we're demolishing this giant food cart pod that is iconic to build a luxury hotel, but like, wait until you see what we do with O'Brien Square. And like that involves putting like a 6-foot fence around it, just like. Ugh.
But there's also evidence that people associated with the Ritz-Carlton specifically asked for no food carts, a fence, and a dog park.
I just feel like it was designed for the Ritz-Carlton dogs to have a place to shit in.
Well, there's no other really residential building directly next to it. So
exactly.
Yeah, it was.
That's what I'm saying. And then they put the fences so they wouldn't have to see the eyesore that is downtown right now. So to me, this isn't a public park. It's an extension of like a Ritz-Carlton atrium or something. Like it's just like, oh, our people need a quote unquote green space. But like your story linked to all the designs being considered, and there are much, much better ones. This one looks like a cement rectangle with some pink stuff and a chandelier, which again, love the chandelier, but like nothing makes sense.
Don't get us wrong. We're not saying anything bad about the chandelier. We
love the chandelier.
Oh yeah, we all love it.
But I especially like this one called the social infrastructure. It had room for a continuation of the green loop. And that's something that hasn't been really brought up, was that this space doesn't connect to other public spaces. And that was the whole point. Like, our policies are trying to make downtown actually more walkable and more bikeable, because right now it's just like very city block heavy. And so this plan doesn't move forward our transportation or our walkability goals, especially with that fence blocking off everything. And like, it lacks vision. It's not going to bring any boys or girls to the yard. Like, what it does is milkshakes and burgers and food carts and actual green spaces. Like, I don't even see public bathrooms there, aside from the dogs. You know what I mean? Like, what point is that space for then? I feel like Darcel would just be like, what?
Yeah.
They even have a stage that I'm like, they're never going to program shit on that stage. Like, come on, girl.
Yeah.
Come on, girl. That's Portland, by the way. Girl was Portland at that point.
Yeah, I know it does. It's just kind of, if it had a fence, it wouldn't be as part of the city's infrastructure the way that parks should be. And, some of the cool thing about having food carts and just spaces where people can gather is that oftentimes they are kind of on the street. And that was how the old food cart pod was. That kind of turned the street into a new sort of environment.
Well, from your story, it seems like it's already set. Like, this is what's moving forward.
Yeah, that's what the leaders kind of say. I mean, people were very upset. The design commissioners really didn't like it, none of them. The person who led the project last year from the Portland Parks Foundation was also very strongly against it. So I guess it's possible that if there's enough public backlash, they might rethink it. But I think they just don't think it's possible to have a park in that area without it being fenced in.
Well, public, we need backlash. You've heard her, public.
You can still fill out this survey.
Yeah, we'll link it to the show notes. We'll link the survey to the show notes.
February 19th. You still have a good amount of time.
Yeah. Well, all right. Well, Taylor, thank you so much for bringing us this story. I had a lot of fun reading through it. But let's take a quick break here. And when we come back, more headlines of the week.
TIAA is on a mission. Why? Because 54% of Black Americans don't have enough savings to retire. So in collaboration with big-name artists like Wyclef Jean, TIAA released Paper Right, new music inspiring a new financial future. With 100% of streaming sales going to a nonprofit that teaches students how to invest. Stream Paper Right now and help close the gap.
Well, John, what headline are you talking through today?
I'm mostly pulling from reporting by Shane Dixon Kavanaugh and his colleagues at the Oregonian, talking about the Fire Bureau Portland Street response. So last week, the Fire Bureau said that they want to cut like $3 million out of the Portland Street response's budget. That's like a third of their budget. I guess I shouldn't say that they are going to do it, but they floated it as a possibility. And this is all coming because there's like an $11 million budget gap that the fire department is looking at. Got some headlines. People are upset about this idea. Well, in swoops Carmen Rubio, city commissioner, and who is also a candidate for mayor. And she said that she would pay for this by tapping into the Clean Energy Fund money. This is something that she oversees, and we can get into that a little bit more later on. But it's this interesting back and forth over how to fund this program that a lot of people really like, but that is sort of been in political crosshairs basically ever since it was created. What'd you guys think about this?
I was very interested in this because the Portland Clean Energy Fund is going to have a lot more money than they thought they were going to over the next 5 years, like about $500 million. And so they can fund programs like PBOT pretty much the whole bureau, which was going to have to lay off a ton of people and all this stuff because they had this huge budget deficit. Now they kind of don't struggle with that. And that was something that I think some of the people on the PSF commission who discuss kind of the policies of this fund were slightly hesitant about, because I don't know that they think it's good practice to start backfilling existing programs with this new fund that's supposed to kind of be starting new clean energy programs.
Yeah. I mean, and it's just so funny that one of these weird things that happens in Portland, we created this new tax, and then we're like, oh my gosh, it's generating too much money. What do we do with all this money that this thing is generating? And Rubio, I feel like, just had this like magical fortune of being the commissioner that was put in charge of this thing. So she gets to sort of like scoot around town, just like, offering these solutions that nobody else has access to because she's the one administering it, But
I wonder if any of them would have been able to do that, though, John. Like, had the forethought to be like, oh, here's a solution. Do you know? Like, I wonder. Like, I get what you're saying, because I'm also like, what a fortunate place to have just a pile of money. But do you think anybody else would have been able to maneuver that?
I mean, I don't know. I just don't think anybody else has the opportunity. You know what I mean? It's sort of like, I don't know the specifics of like how you get the money from this fund into like city bureaus. And it sounds like there is some skepticism about whether that can actually be done or not, right? Like, this money hasn't been transferred. Rubio's just on the record of saying that she would like to see it happen.
They're still kind of in the process of making this decision. There's this multi-member commission of people who've been discussing this for a long time. And they have meetings pretty regularly. I'm not sure when the decision is going to be made. But yeah, I mean, back when Commissioner of the Transportation Bureau, Mingus Mapps, were talking about how they needed funding, this was in September, I think, they kind of assumed that they would be able to use PSF money. Even though they didn't know that there was going to be this additional influx, they were like, well, they sort of were going to fall back on it and making this suggestion.
Right. Well, I did read that the Planning and Sustainability Director, Donnie Oliveira, I'm not sure if I'm saying that name right, but they were quoted as saying each of the proposed projects have met requirements established by the fund to cut carbon emissions. So it's not like they're forcing or jamming a square peg into a round hole. Unfortunately, like you said, it's not for new projects. It's essentially to just build the infrastructure, or to hold the line for the infrastructure so more things could be built on top. And I feel like, that's what needs to happen. We can't just like be top heavy. We need to have roads that work. So I know it was last December when Commissioner Rubio made that announcement that she was going to be funneling millions from, the clean energy program directly into more climate friendly efforts managed across 6 city bureaus. And so she called out PBOT, Bureau of Environmental Services, the Housing Bureau, Office of Management and Finance, which I still don't know what they do, the Water Bureau, and of course, Parks and Rec. So all these needy bureaus, then they're just literally just trying to do their job. But what I really admire is how Commissioner Rubio is politicking. Like, she's kind of like a ninja. Like, she doesn't make waves. She rarely makes the news, and I mean that in a super good way, except when she seems to be bailing out all of her colleagues and finding like really clever and simple solutions to issues that everyone else just seems to butt heads about. But I completely agree with you, John, where you're just like, how fortunate to be in that position.
Yeah. I mean, and like, let's like connect the dots. Like, okay, we're talking about PBOT. Like, who is it that's in charge of PBOT? Mingus Mapps, which is going to be someone she's running against in the race for mayor. We've been talking about the Portland Street Response and the fire department. Who's in charge of that? Oh yeah, Renee Gonzalez, who is a person that she is going to be running against for mayor in the fall.
It's really smart. It's not like she was like, oh, I'll be in charge of this bureau. Like, the bureaus are handed out by the mayor, right? So it was the luck of the draw that she got this bureau. But I feel like, she's really playing it well. In Mexico, we have this saying for people that kind of do this when they're like, resourceful and kind kind of quiet and resilient. And it's like a curse word, but it means a lot of things. And so we would say that out of everyone, she's la más cabrona, which means like she's like the baddest MFer. You know what I mean?
I mean, it's only $3 million out of their really big fund. But I will say it concerns me that the Portland Street response is not supported enough by the current commissioners, that it keeps having to rely, it seems like, on these stopgap kind of Band-Aids, where we need a more sustainable form of funding for them to really show that the city's committed to maintaining it. It's always something that's willing to be cut, even though it's very popular and works well.
Yeah, I mean, and I feel like it's easy to like look fondly upon this because I think that we all believe in Portland Street Response and think it's really important and like think it should be funded. But I can also imagine another situation where, you know, this is all going to get sort of jumbled up once we go away from the Bureau management system, but like whoever is in charge of the Portland Clean Energy Fund just sort of having the king-making ability to sprinkle money wherever they want. Like somebody with a different ideology, that could be like a really gnarly thing, you know, that could turn into an opportunity for graft, that could turn into an opportunity for funding stuff that we don't believe in as a society. Like, I don't know that I'm totally comfortable with the precedent of one person like having this endless pot of money just to sprinkle around Portland.
It's a slippery slope, I think.
But we need money, John.
Yeah, but I mean, they do have this checks and balances.
And it is our money that we're giving. And it's supposedly, yeah, like Taylor said, there's some checks and balances. But I completely agree with you. Like, it's like, good thing we like what Commissioner Rubio has chosen to spend the money on, you know? But yeah, I mean, going back to the Portland Street response, which is why, you know, this whole thing came up, Commissioner Rene Gonzalez has yet to offer a real plan of his own on how to best continue the program and make it sustainable.
Well, he doesn't like it.
Exactly. Well, I mean, could we say that? I mean, allegedly, it's well documented that he doesn't seem to be supporting this, but like, it's hard for me to say that just because he's not made the announcement. This is all hearsay. And
I think it's safe to say he's not giving like full-throated support of Portland Street Response. Yeah. So he told the Oregonian recently that he said that like, this idea of cutting the money is hypothetical, but, and this is a direct quote, we do have to address the structural deficit within the Bureau. The problem with fire is that there's not a lot of fat to cut outside of its core mission. So like the implication there is that the Portland Street Response program is outside of the core mission of the Fire Bureau.
Which is, sorry. I mean, maybe they shouldn't be housed there.
I mean, yeah.
No one should be where they shouldn't, when they're not wanted, you know?
Yeah. I mean, and like, you know, most of the calls that the Portland Street Response responds to would traditionally be handled by the police, according to like a Portland State University study. I'm not saying that it would be better for the Portland Street Response to be a part of the police department. Like that obviously creates its own problems.
But they don't come up with a fire truck putting out fires, literally. So yeah, it is kind of odd. I think.
I know. I agreed. And I feel like a better leader, a more like someone with an actual strong vision, not only in the police bureau, but like in our city leadership structure, would see that as an opportunity to rehaul the police department and their priorities. Like, hey, we're bringing over the Portland Street Response. From here, moving forward, this is how we're going to redistribute how calls are done.
Yeah.
You know, rather than like, hey, let's send a guy with a gun every gosh darn time for absolutely no reason. You know, give them training for a certain set of skills and then get really upset when they do that. Yeah. And this is a perfect opportunity to like re-examine that.
I agree that like part of it is just creating this entirely new department and then sort of figuring out where to sort of weld it on to the existing city structure is like, that's not an easy thing to do, however you cut it.
Yeah. Thanks, John. Thanks for breaking that down for us.
Yeah, no problem.
Well, my story this week is how two Multnomah County commissioners have publicly shared their skepticism towards Governor Tina Kotek's 90-day fentanyl emergency declaration. One of them is calling it a baloney resolution. And shout out to Kevin Foster at Portland Mercury, who wrote the article. So if you tuned in to last week's Friday Roundup, you might remember I kind of broke down that, you know, what this 90-day fentanyl emergency declaration entailed. And it was easy because there wasn't much. Mainly funds, more hands on deck, and way more focused attention, and hopefully a lot of collaboration between state, county, and city governments. Unfortunately, two things it didn't seem to include were clear goals or a definite end date. And I was optimistic that the state, city, and county would figure that out in the process. Because, declaring an emergency means that they're meeting every single day at a command center, figuring stuff out. And John, I know you had a lot of skepticism. Well, now this week...
You just made the command center sound really cool, though. You might be wanting to be back over.
It's probably just the Darcel 15.
Wait, an underground command center? That's even better.
As long as there's a chandelier.
God, I hope there's a chandelier at this command center. Now this week, the initial conversation that the county commissioner had when voting for this declaration, this 90-day fentanyl emergency declaration, was shared. And Multnomah County commissioners Sharon Mearin and Julia Brim Edwards seem to have super valid points. And before I jump into what was said, I just want to point out that, and this is important, I think, Multnomah County Commissioner Sharon Mearin has been very vocal in the past of our current Multnomah County Chair, Jessica Vega Peterson's leadership. And you might remember that they ran against each other for that county chair. And Vega Peterson, captured nearly 42% of that vote, and Mearin only 18. And I'm not saying this to invalidate any of, County Commissioner Sharon Mearin's criticisms. I just think it's really important context if you don't know. So bringing this back to the 90-day fentanyl emergency declaration, the county was specifically tasked with launching a public education campaign targeted at prevention and treatment resources, while also issuing reports on overdose data. So the vague general goal is to make an impact on the crisis within 90 days and also provide a roadmap for further sustained and further action. That I'm reading this kind of verbatim because that's what was said in the meeting. Like, hey guys, this is what we're doing. This is what we're voting on. So when this was all presented to the county board, Commissioner Sharon Mearin was quoted as saying, "It's hard to formulate questions because in my view, this resolution says nothing and does nothing." And I just want to further quote what she said at that meeting because it was pretty good. So Commissioner Mearin also said, "I had no idea until I actually read this resolution that it would be crafted to literally be the least we can do.
Yeah.
This resolution, I'm sorry, it is pathetic. It is a contrivance and feeble attempt to govern by press release. It will solve nothing and it will do nothing but allow the chair to check a box saying she's declared a state of emergency in Multnomah County for all the people who called for it after volunteering, and it demonstrates the depth of the county's seeming allergic reaction to accountability or measurable results."
Oh, brutal.
Damn!
Governing by press release is a great line, I think.
But she could have also been like, there's some issues here. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, no, she kind of was savage.
Yeah, award for most operatic political speech of early contender of the year. Yeah.
I mean, it was good, right?
Yeah.
And the response from the rest of the county commissioners who were in support were similar to my points last week, John, which is like, well, we're going to figure it out as we go along. We just need to get on board because like the city and the state are kind of looking at us now to like work with them. But then County Chair Jessica Vega Peterson was quoted as saying, "The goal is to have a visible improvement in fentanyl consumption in the Portland Central City and improved access to treatment." So again, the key statement, visible improvement, meaning optics, meaning less eyesores in the city. And that was my big concern last week. I remember we're just like, what does visible improvement mean? Because that was getting thrown around a lot. And that's when another county commissioner tagged herself in. And that was County Commissioner Julia Brim Edwards. She pretty much flagged that and was like, hey, reducing visual consumption of fentanyl in the city could just mean that we're going to move it to other parts. Like my districts, like it's like when you sloppily clean a room, in your house and you're just dumping all the stuff in another room, but the stuff is all there. Like it's still there. And so she just brought this up. I mean, all valid points. What do y'all think?
I sort of agree with some of those questions. Like, what are we actually trying to do? Like, what is going to be done at the end of 90 days?
I just feel like in work meetings, I think that you always need a Commissioner Mearin. Even if it's annoying. And here's the deal. She didn't just like write a beautiful flowery retort, but she also proposed an amendment to the resolution, she called for like a 12-month action plan to address the crisis. She basically was like, hey, we should create dashboards to track progress, and she, based on 14 different data points, like she was totally just like, boop, beep, bop, beep, boop, but everybody was like, girl, we have 45 minutes to vote on this, and we don't have time to read through your amendment.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the bigger picture of trying to fix all these things is a good idea and something that we need to work on. But yeah, a 12-month plan seems a lot more sustainable, a lot more reasonable, and something that could actually lead to change. I just don't know what anyone can do to address our fentanyl crisis in 90 days if we're going into it without a plan at the beginning.
Totally. I don't know how they expect it to work. And I appreciate also Brim Edwards calling out the visibility aspect of it. I think that's important because it shows, do we really want to help people, or is it kind of more for the optics of downtown?
So Commissioner Julia Brim Edwards was the only one that high-fived this amendment. Everybody else basically told her to quiet down. And I mean that quite literally. Like somebody actually told her to please control yourself when she was trying to explain. And we're talking about Commissioner Mirren. I think it was Commissioner Stegman was reported as saying, please control yourself. Which is, ouch. I mean, to me, it just explained why the county has been having issues spending their funding and why they seem to be kind of to an island of themselves. Like they have a dysfunctional work team. They need to go on a retreat and do trust falls. I mean, I'm being serious. Like I'm joking, but I'm like, that's not good. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so again, the chair, Vega Peterson, defended the county's work touting urgency and partnership. Basically like, hey man, we're just trying to get along here with everybody else. We're going to do this, So we're going to see what happens. I feel like knowing that all the county commissioners are not fully on board is kind of a bummer, but I do hope that the ones who are kind of saying things that are very valid, like we all said, they don't just throw their ball down and go home. Does that mean, they're not just I hope they stay active within the process. Cause we're going to need that to continue figuring out, hey, what are the goals here? Mm-hmm.
I think they just disagree so strongly on maybe what the plan would be, that it's daunting to think of that conversation, figuring it out, because I feel like that many people have different kind of ideas about, how harsh criminal penalties should be. I just can't imagine it being a smooth process. Yeah, as you said, they just don't seem to agree on anything. So I don't know what they would come up with.
Well, yeah. I mean, I feel like April's going to come up real quick. So we will get to the end of this 90-day fentanyl emergency a lot sooner than it feels like at this moment.
Yeah, I just hope they stop fighting each other and make it about the work, because even though valid points ahead, I'm just speaking specifically about Commissioner Mirren, it felt personal.
I don't know. My speculation is maybe it was so forceful because it felt like an attempt that wasn't going to work, when you know that somebody isn't going to listen to your point, so you just go over the top with it hard to make sure that people hear it. that was sort of my read on the politics of this, but again, who knows?
Was it just a dunk post buzzer? She's like, look, this point isn't going to count, but here we go.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, reporters appreciate it because it makes for interesting stories. So thank you.
Yeah.
If you're trying to get press coverage, you're welcome.
Well, I just hope that Rubio kicks them some money for some teamwork. Retreat for the county. I know it's the city, but I'm sure Rubio will figure it out. And maybe what they possibly need is just a chandelier, just one chandelier in their county headquarters.
That's so nice to tie everything together.
I mean, in the command center at the very least.
When you get stressed, you look at it, you see the little sparkles, and it's going to be okay.
It's a good slogan. The city that sparkles. There we go.
The city that sparkles. Not necessarily works, but god dang, we're charming. Well, guys, thanks so much for hanging out with me and breaking down some of the headlines of the week. Taylor, always a blast to have you on. And John, I'll see you in a minute.
Yeah, thanks, Claudia.
Thank you very much.
That's all for today here on CityCast Portland. Thank you so much for listening. Our executive producer is John Notarianni. Our producers this week were Julia Fiaioni and Lizzie Goldsmith. Our newsletter editors were Rachel Monahan and Adrian Gonzalez. Our host is me, Claudia Meza. Original music by Jenny Conley and Stephen Drizos. Additional music by Epidemic Sound and All the Kimonos. We'll be back Monday morning with more from around the city. Until then, see you at Slim's.